Let's talk about the top 5 questions men need to ask women before they start to commit. And I found this video on TikTok under this guy's name is a Black American Bad Boy. And I saw the video, was like, you know what? He brings up a lot of great points that I feel that in the course of the dating phase, you need to ask. Now, I'll preface this by saying, he says you should ask these questions, and it sounds like he's saying ask them point blank. I typically say that because women take 2 to 3 months to solidify their feelings, you need to take that 2 to 3 months doing your own due diligence about a woman. And so these kind of questions are things you should keep in mind and sporadically bring up within the course of that 3 months. So by the end of that 3 months, when she's coming to you and saying, hey, what are we? Can we be in a relationship? You'll be able to assess based on these questions if she actually makes a good pick and if you should continue forward with her, or if she's one you should leave by the wayside. So let's go ahead and get into some of these questions.
So here are the top 5 questions that men need to ask a woman before he commits. There are a lot of men out here making poor decisions on women. I'm here to help y'all to stop making those poor decisions. The first question should always be, who raised you? Quick shout out to the OG TK Kirkland. Was it a single parent home where your parents are guardians, abusers? Do you have an existing relationship with your mother and father? Do you know your father? If so, do you have any anger, hate, hurt, or hard feelings toward that man? I don't care who likes it or not, that truly does influence how a woman interacts with a man.
Now that I have found to be absolutely true. Women who have great relationships with their fathers, they have generally a really good view and concept of who men are, how they act, and they're not gonna be so quick to jump on a guy for acting like a guy. Whereas women that come from households where either the father wasn't there or the father was abusive, as sorry as I feel for those women, the reality is that those women often come to relationships with men with a lot of baggage. They've often also then chosen other men that have similar qualities to the abusive father or the neglectful father, which means that when she comes to you, she's gonna be in this realm of having an ideal of how men are supposed to act that are very negative. And if you act the opposite, it's actually going to freak her out, because the practice she's been in is men always treat me like crap. They ready to abuse me. They don't want to listen to me. And when you act the opposite way, even though you would think that would be a good thing, if they're in the practice of being around toxic men, then you being not toxic is going to freak her out more, because she's not going to know what to expect. All right. But across the board, women that come from families where they get along great, they've learned how to have communication styles that are actually beneficial, they've been heard and understood in their relationships with their mom and their dad and their siblings and stuff like that, those women are gonna be an absolute joy to date. But if there's any kind of toxicity in the family unit there's gonna be a lot of things that she's gonna need to overcome to have a well-balanced relationship with you. And if she hasn't already worked on those things, sorry to say it, guys, but not really sorry, it's not your job to come in and be Captain Save-'em or to fix those things. She needs to be doing the work herself already. If she hasn't, you can feel sorry for her. Do not date her.
Number 2, how do you handle your emotions? Do you shut down? Am I gonna have to drag information out of you? Do you lash out at people? Do you become too hard to be around? Do people have to escape you when you're angry? I've heard women admit that whenever they're upset, they can't even be in the same house as anybody else. That is a really big red flag.
Now, I think that this question could potentially come up at some point that you should ask, but the problem is that's the same thing as like a woman asking a man, hey, so would you ever harm me or abuse me in a relationship? It's one of those questions where the other person can say, of course, I would never do that, or I would have a rational reaction to if X, Y, and Z happened. But people can say that in the moment with no evidence, and it'd be a lot, because saying one thing and experiencing a thing are completely different. So for you guys, yes, you want to see if she's emotionally stable in these moments, but the easiest way to do that, or the better way to do that rather, is to actually give yourself 2 to 3 months to date her, and when conflicts arise or when you have a differing opinion than hers, see how she reacts. Because it's very easy for women to say, oh, I would be totally even killer. I would want to sit down and talk about it like a rational adult. And I've done this. I've talked to women on dates where it's like, oh yeah, like I would totally just sit there and hear what you have to say and we could have a mutual conversation. But then fast forward to a few months later, get them into a conflict and like, you did this and blah, 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 and I don't want to listen, I don't want to talk about it, I'm leaving the room. And then you realize, oh, so she lied. So like, I should have just waited and observed and then just asked her and assumed that what she was telling me was the truth. And we want to, it's easy because when we give answers to people, we want to give an answer that we feel would put us in a good light, and that would be the ideal situation. Like, you ask a woman how she would react, of course she's gonna say, well, ideally, I would just be able to sit there and take what you're saying as a constructive criticism and be able to listen. Like, that sounds really good on paper to say, so she's gonna say it. But in practice, she's probably gonna react a different way. So you can ask that question, but it's better to be more observant of like how she actually is, which is why it's very important earlier if you as a guy to not be afraid to run into conflict. If she does something that annoys you, or she hurts your feelings in some way, or she says something out of pocket, you want to call out those things early on to see what her reaction is going to be. Is she going to apologize, like I talked about in the previous video, or is she going to be blaming you, or saying, well, I only did this because you did this thing, or that's not a thing, or well, you did whatever, because if she's responding that way, that's bad. But you'll get to experience that as you actually are willing to go into conflicts with her and get her natural reaction versus you asking and getting the proper sounding reaction.
Third question. Are you petty? I've said this before. If she's the type that likes to return energy, that is a sign of inconsistent character. Leave her. That means that her respect, her desire, her compassion, even her infidelity may be just as inconsistent. Bro, all jokes aside, run. Because the very definition of petty is to care about small, unimportant things, and that may lead to her being unnecessarily unkind. You don't want her. So if she says, how I treat you will be a reflection of how you treat me, wrap it up. Do not pass go. Do not collect on the cheeks. Do not do anything else but pay the tab and part ways. Trust me, you'll thank me later.
Yo, I never really thought about that, but I like the fact that he said that if she says the way you treat me is how I'm gonna treat you. Here's why I guess that's good advice, is because there's gonna be times where, like, say you come home from work and you've had like a bad day, right? And so you get in there and she's like, hey babe, how was your day? And you're like, I'm just blah, 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 blah. Well, in that moment, if you're grumpy, do you want her to now be grumpy to you? Or do you want her to be like, hey babe, like I know you had a bad day at work, but like, hey, let's just, relax. Like, you want her to be in a mood that's gonna get you out of your mood. Just like there's gonna be times when, she's had a bad day or she's being all hormonal, and then she's showing up in a way that is not usually the way she shows up. In those moments, she's not gonna want you to be negative. Like, especially like when women get on their periods and they have all kinds of hormone things going and they're cranky and they're moody. Like, the last thing they're gonna want in those moments is for you to be like, well, you're moody, so I'm gonna be moody too. Like, that doesn't benefit. So yeah, a woman that's gonna be petty and playing tit for tat, you do not want that. You want a woman that's gonna, at times, be better than you, just like at times you're gonna be better than her, but you're both trying to ultimately feel for the other person in those moments and be like, let me get you back to a better state of mind, or let's talk about why you're feeling this way or why you're lashing out, versus, well, you're lashing out, well, bump that, I'm gonna lash out at you too. Like, you don't need that, guy. It's not fair to either of you to do that.
Now, number 4, and this is very important, have you been SA'd?
An SA'd, by the way, means have you been assaulted in a physical manner?
Gentlemen, if there's even the slightest chance of this becoming a sexual relationship, this needs to be addressed up front. If the answer is yes, has she been to therapy? Has she done the work to heal, or at least enough work to be able to identify the triggers? If she's able to identify the triggers, tell her that she has to name those triggers to you. What she says should be what your decision to leave or to stay is based on. And from the bottom of my heart, with all sincerity, there should be no exceptions.
Now, unfortunately, if you talk to women globally, the majority of them in some way or capacity have been SA'd. And so to say, don't date any women that have ever been that way, most women have gone through that. So, but to his point, a woman that has gone through that, what are her triggers that make her feel like that's happening again? Has she gone to therapy? Has she actively dealt with the repercussions of those situations? If she has, and she's able to verbalize, hey, like, I can't do these certain positions because it reminds me of that, or you can't say these certain things because it triggers me back. Like, that's a woman being loving by giving you warnings and ideals about what things are going to cause her to feel in that certain way. And that, in that case, it's totally fine because she has given you warnings about that stuff. But women that are going in blind and haven't done that stuff and just everything you do is just trigger, it's going to become very difficult to date those kind of women, because we can feel bad for her all day again, but if she's not dealing with her own traumas and allowing you to be understanding and helping to navigate your way through what those were for her, so you won't trip up and do things that are minor of that, then it's just going to cause a lot of pain and anxiousness and anxiety on your part, not knowing what you should or shouldn't do around her, or say or shouldn't say around her, and it'll lead to bad times.
Now, number 5, Almost just as important, what does family planning look like to her? Is she on birth control? Is she pro-life, pro-choice? Does she plan on having children anytime soon? Also, state your status on becoming a father right then and there. If you do not see yourself being capable of being there for a child if that situation does arise, say that. Seriously, discuss a plan of action before you ever get to the point where pregnancy happens.
And yeah, too many people, unfortunately, just go into like dating, situationships, and relationships like, oh, I'll just do whatever and things are fine and nothing will happen to me and blah, blah, blah. And they go out there and they hook up and they're unprotected and then they're having all these babies that they don't want to take care of. So for one, if you don't have a vasectomy and if she's not on birth control, then you should not be having any kind of unprotected sex at all, because all these babies that are just popping out as a result of, oh, we just hooked up and things happen. Things never just happen. You, as the guy, did not properly plan. You didn't make sure that she had protection. You didn't make sure you had protection. And so, even though, the woman's the one that's letting us in, you got to take responsibility for your part. If she's like, hey, come in me and, don't wear protection, and you decide to agree, that is your fault. Even if she left herself open to that, you still decided, I'm going to agree to this plan. Oh, I was horny in the moment. I didn't want to disappoint her. Disappoint her versus having a kid for 18 plus years that you got to deal with for the rest of your life with a woman that you don't actually care about, all right? And then also to that point, yeah, if you're a guy that doesn't want kids and she wants kids, I do not care how much you guys love each other or grow to care for each other. That is a thing that unequivocally is going to break you guys up. And when I was doing online dating, I would put on my profile, I'm living the child-free life. I would still have women hit me up, take me on a few dates and be like, oh, I actually want kids. And I'd be like, why did you match with me? Because I told you going forth on my profile, it was on my profile, I don't want kids. This is not a thing that I'm gonna change my mind about. And no matter how much I love you, no matter how great your stuff is in the sack, I'm not changing my mind. And so you as a guy have to press that, because there are gonna be some women that come along and be like, I thought I could change your mind. And if your guy already knows emphatically you don't want kids, you cannot think that she's never gonna be resentful for that or not try to push the agenda once you get married. Because some women will think, well, if I just trap him into a marriage and I'll just be like, boom, we're married now. Oh, we should have a kid, and he'll understand because he loves me. And to prove that he loves me, I'll make sure he needs to get me pregnant. And that's not how any of this works. So just understand that, guy. He's absolutely right here.
Now for some bonus information. If she's fresh out of a relationship, don't do that. You do not want to be the rebound guy. It never ends well. Just don't do it.
It does not, because women will get out of a relationship and it's almost like they're trying to, especially if the guy broke it off or if the guy in the last part of the relationship was kind of slacking off and not showing that he cared as much, then women will go out there and that first guy they date is to prove to themselves that they're still attractive and can still get a guy. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the guy that she wants long-term. Now, that's not all situations, and there are ways that as a guy, you can play that so that way, even if you were the rebound guy, you can get it to the finish line and actually date her. But more often than not, women coming fresh out of a relationship, if they haven't given themselves the actual time to grieve that relationship, to go through a period of singleness where they can kind of assess where they went wrong, what they did wrong, what the other person that they're with did wrong, and really come to a peace about the situation, then yeah, you're being used for a hookup and for an ego boost. And that's not where you want to land with women that just got out of a relationship.
Beware of any form of the phrase, you're not my usual type. That means she has zero experience with a guy like you, and you're more than likely going to be the experiment. Don't do it.
Yeah, I talked about that earlier, guys. If they're saying things like, oh, well, you're not what I usually date, then she has no context for what you're gonna bring to the table. It can feel uncomfortable. It can feel a little bit, honestly, like you're controlling, because going from guys that were abusing her to a guy like you that's just trying to set boundaries could be like, oh my God, how dare you? It's a lot to deal with.
If she's celibate and you're not, let that woman stay single. And last but not least, please take this with you. If she ain't nasty, you don't want her.
That last one he said, if she's not nasty, you don't want her. Real talk, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. Having vanilla sex in the bedroom with a woman that just lies there like a dead fish and is not willing to do things that she would consider outside the realm of just vanilla sex, doing certain different positions, you going down on each other, you bringing toys into the equation, you bringing other, if you're into that kind of lifestyle, other people to the situation, or you wanting to do it in a variety of different places outside of your house, or, her not being able to bring stuff to the bedroom that's just the stuff you wouldn't want to talk about with other people, but be like, oh, but in this realm it's totally fine. I have found that the lack of creativity in the bedroom correlates with a very dull relationship, and with a woman that is very conservative in tone, which isn't bad in terms of like, not overexposing yourself in public, but also in terms of her attitude though, like, thinking things have to be a certain way. And if you have certain thoughts or feelings about things that you're suddenly like a toxic guy or whatever, like all that stuff translates. So yeah, if she's not open with you in the bedroom to do anything and not have any kind of judgment, then you probably have a very judgmental woman, and that is going to be a headache to deal with. So hopefully, guys, you've gained some stuff from this video talking about the various 5 things that you as a guy should be questioning women about before you commit to them. And that'll guide you in the first 3 months of dating to really see at the end of it if this is the woman of your dreams, or if it's a woman that you thought was a dream woman that needs to go down to the wayside.
You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high class man. You a high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man.